So I found this very nice picture of a goldfish, and we're going to do a continual line drawing. So I'm mapping out roughly where my bird is going to go on the page before I start drawing. And then once I've put my pen onto the surface of the paper, I'm not going to take it off. I'm going to let it move around where my eye is travelling. So I'm looking all the time at my bird picture. And then I'm letting my pen travel where my eye is going. So it's quite a nice way of drawing. Try and keep the pen moving nice and quickly. I've speeded this up a little, I must admit, just so it wouldn't take too long to watch for you. But I'm trying to mark out the different areas of colour with a little line around it and letting that link my pen to where it wants to be. So you're getting kind of loops and things, little lines and things where you would normally probably take your pen off the paper. With this, you're just keeping it on and letting it travel. Even if you have to double up, that's absolutely fine. So I'm a bit cross with myself here because you can see that I am drawing the feet, but I've left the camera angle so you can't see them. So you have to wait to see the feet. You'll see them in a minute. Just finishing off some bits around the face. Oh, I took my pen off the paper there. I cheated. There you go. You get an idea there of what it looks like with the feet on a fir cone. So now I'm going to add some colour. I've got some watercolours. I'm using plenty of water. I'm going to experiment here and just throw some paint onto the paper. You can see as I brush, the ink, which is water-based, is spreading with my paint. I quite like it. It's giving quite nice effects. It's that kind of happy accident that's happening, which makes watercolour really, really enjoyable to use. So I'm just adding a nice warm browny colour here, putting plenty of water on the paper. You could try using other things. You may want to use coloured pencils. You might want to use ink. Try a bit of flicking. Check with Mum first. Check it's not going to go all over a nice kitchen table. Sorry, mums. And really let the colour go. I'm trying to leave the bits that are white stay white because I feel at the end it might make my painting look better if I keep my white bits white. There's a blob just to the left of his eye which I haven't taken off, but I'm just going to leave it for now. So bit of sort of change of colour here. I'm going to go cooler with my colour, putting a bit of blue with it, a bit of purple maybe, just into the background there. The photograph had a sort of cool grey background. I'm using my brush now to just sort of swash the colour around. I've made that word up. To try and make it breathe with the background, try and make it almost blend in a bit. So a little bit more of the blue, some of the brown has dried a bit now, so those aren't blending in quite as much as they were earlier. But I'm trying to leave the puddles of water on the paper, because I'm going to show you in a little while what I'm going to do with that. There are ways of moving water around on a page, but you've got to have the water on the page in the first place to get that to work. So try and use plenty of water. It might make your paper wrinkle if you're not using a heavy watercolour paper, but that's fine. It still works as a piece of art. So I'm adding a little bit of red now, going into the details, looking at the colours on the Goldfinch, trying to make sure that the punchy colours stay punchy. And I'm not going to try and mix that in too much with the brown and the blue. I want to try and keep that isolated so it keeps nice and red, even though a bit has just blended there a bit into the background, but I don't mind that too much. It's such a characteristic colour on him that I want that red to really stand out. And I can use a little bit more of that on the feet. Great big claws that he's got. They look enormous compared to the size of his body, but that's what they're like in the picture. There are other colours that are on the Goldfinch, but we'll come to those in a second. It's really just really important. I just want you to really concentrate on leaving water on the surface of the paper if you can. Going into a bit more detail now with a black watercolour. I'm using my brush and watercolour paint as opposed to going over it with my black pen. I could do that, but I'd have to wait for the watercolour to dry. So, but this way I can sort of cheat the time a bit and use my watercolour black to try and add some detail. And I'm going into the fir cone a little, just to try and show how the shadows are in amongst each piece of the fir cone. So adding a little bit more of the black on the tail and the flight feathers on his wings as well, which these are, they lay across his back when he's not actually flying. A little bit more detail in among these sort of fluffy bits on his back. They're all just important markings that make him who he is. And when you've chosen your bird, you must look carefully at the way the markings are, because they are characteristic for the particular species that you choose. You know, if you think of puffins or pheasants or woodpeckers, whatever they may be, they all have very, very characteristic markings, and that's kind of what you're trying to achieve, is to give it that classic look for the chosen bird. Okay, just a little bit more detail around the eye, a bit on top of his head there. It's looking not too bad. Maybe pick out a few more details in the fir cones. I don't want to spend too long on that bit because it is kind of incidental. It's just something he's standing on, so I'm not going to stay too long painting those. Just quickly put in a brush stroke just to suggest what it is. And of course, he is a goldfinch, and surprisingly, the only bit of him that is gold is the bit right on the tip of his flight feathers on his wings, and they really stand out. I'm hoping that this yellow is going to be strong enough. I think it should be. It's just bleeding a bit with the black, but there we go. We'll see how we get on. Now it's the fun bit. Now I've turned the sound off. You probably can't hear it, but I'm going to dry it a little bit with a hairdryer. There's probably a hairdryer in your home somewhere, but I would check with Mum first, or Dad, that you can use it. Not everybody likes you to pinch their hairdryer, but I'm going to blow some of this liquid around, try and get a few sort of interesting marks happening. You can see where the blobs of water are disappearing off, and they add a bit of interest. They could be twigs, or they could be just light bouncing off the bird, or something like that. But it's quite an enjoyable technique. Give it a try if you can. You could also do this with a straw and just blow at the water that you've left on the page instead. But I'm trying to dry it a little bit because I want to do another layer of colour over the top. And this is kind of important because I want to show that the bird is three-dimensional. So what I'm adding is some darker grey tone. Now, this looks quite dark, and you're probably thinking, ooh, it doesn't really look very good, it looks a bit black. But as it dries, you're going to see that it goes a bit lighter. And I'm trying to get the bird to fit into the atmosphere of the painting. Got a few more sploshy bits happening, adding a bit more blue to it here, just to sort of freshen up the colour a bit. And really, once I've done that and I've made sure I've got colour where I want it to go, it's then a question of picking up the hairdryer again and blowing it away. You'll notice I'm going away from his back. I want to leave the lighter area on his back lighter, apart from that bit, but blow the colour away, and you can see how it's lightening as it's drying. That tone is lightening up quite nicely, and yeah, it works quite well. Quite pleased with that. But it's got energy. The way that this water travels around, it leaves energetic marks on the page, and that's what I'm trying to get here, that sense of life. And I want yours to have that same feeling. So the sharpness of your original drawing gets kind of brought to life by the way, the energy you're putting in with the water and the hairdryer. Or a straw, if that's what you've got. Okay. So finally, I'm just going to add a little bit more colour to the fir cone here, and and leave a little bit of water on there, just as I have done with the other watercolour bits. And I'm then going to use my hairdryer again and blow a few more of those lines around. I think they add even more energy. We love energy. Okay, great. I think that looks all right. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do is there's a mark on his face which is just bothering me. So I'm just going to take some clean water and use my brush and just work it onto that area where it's got a hard line across his face. I want it to be a slightly smoother transition from the tonal values, and just a little bit of dark shadow on his beak. And that, I think, is probably where I'm going to leave it. Maybe just fiddle about with a bit more red, just to beef that redness up around the eye, under his beak there on his chin, and that's it. Okay.